Hello, this is Sergia Louise Anderson. Today we're going to have a really fun interview with Mint, who opened the first pole dance studios in Egypt. Super excited to have her here with us today. I'm very lucky to call her a friend. I was able to visit her studios out in Pulfit, Egypt. So very excited to have her on. Also, if you are all coming to this page or seeing this live and you are curious about pole dancing, or you are a beginner at pole dancing, I have a free gift for you guys over on my page in my link in my bio. A free class for you guys, so definitely check that out. I will wait for Mint. Here she is. I'm just going to bring her on with. And welcome, everybody. Welcome on this Tuesday. Hi, Mint.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, how are you? How are
So
you
good to see
doing?
you.
It's so good to see you too. I'm so happy to be here and so happy to be, connecting with you and doing this live. I mean, like what influence you've had on my pole journey. So I'm so happy to be here.
I'm just so honored to be able to talk about your story today. And I did mention that Mint and I are friends and buddies, and we have a bit of a history ourselves.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll probably get into that as we go. But I wanted to highlight, Mint is a,
absolutely. We definitely will.
yes, she is absolutely a pioneer in the industry, bringing pole dance and pole fitness to Egypt. Um, many years ago, and I would love to hop in right at the beginning of your pole dance journey and kind of what inspired you to open your studios in Egypt, and how that has been a different journey for you than maybe some other pole dance studio owners around the
Yeah.
world.
Absolutely, it has been. Let me set my phone down. I realized that holding it is going to be a bit uncomfortable for a while. So, so basically, the way I opened the studio was by complete accident. I don't think that when I was 20 years old, I was courageous enough to think that this would even be an industry that would, be suitable for this side of the world. And it happened by accident because when I came back from university, I still wanted to practice pole, like personally. And when my friends would come over to my house, and my house was kind of, that house that all the friends go to all the time. Um, so when they'd come over, they'd ask me to teach them. And because I was already teaching in my last year of university, I already had the knowledge to be able to do that. So I started teaching them, and then they started getting really excited. And, because I had this open house policy, they would start inviting their friends that I didn't even know to my bedroom, in my house, with my wardrobe, bed, desk in the room, and I'd start teaching them as well. And when it became a regular habit, I realized, well, I better move the pole out of my personal bedroom because I don't know these people, and I better start charging these strangers, right? So I moved it out into one of the other rooms that we had in the house, and I was so lucky because I lived with my grandparents, and you know my grandpa being a Middle Eastern man who grew up in the countryside. He is well traveled and everything, but he didn't necessarily come off as the most, liberal person in the world. Um, like let me use basically that room for a good 2 years and teach pole there. And when I first moved it out into that room, my pole, my personal pole, and I kind of ran like mini classes in my home for about 3 months. And then when I found that the interest was still there and it wasn't dying out, I was like, well, okay, I better turn it into a studio then and figure out a name and that's basically how it was born. I think it was a really happy accident. I wasn't looking at living in Egypt at the time. I actually wanted to find a job abroad, and I wasn't done with living abroad yet. So that's kind of how it happened.
I love it. I love it. So the powerful woman who opened the
Yeah,
first pole dance studio in Egypt, it happened by accident.
absolutely.
I love it. I love it. You
Absolutely.
know, it's just such a beautiful story of
Yeah.
living and creating your, you know, filling a need and
Yeah.
following dreams, following your passion. And, you know, it means that you as a studio owner, you're in it because you have this passion to share something
Yeah.
that you so much joy. So tell me, where were you
Absolutely.
in university?
So
Um,
I went to I
because you grew
I
up in Egypt and then you went to
yes.
university.
Yeah. So I was born in Egypt. I grew up in Egypt. I only have an Egyptian passport. I was actually asked that question today, but but it's the truth. And what happened was is when I went to university, I was a week late to joining because basically my all the women in my family were trying their best to not have me travel for uni, which is a story for another time. But basically, what
You
ended
went,
up happening,
they couldn't hold you back, girl.
no, it didn't. It didn't. They were like, you should stay here. You know, we'll buy you any car you want. And I was like, I don't want a car. I want to go live abroad and study abroad. So basically, what ended up happening was, is I, 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 I ended up going to uni a week late, and the first week is so important because it's Freshers Week. It's when everybody gets to know each other. And you know, I don't know if you guys know, but Egyptians are really friendly. Like everybody talks to everybody. There is no the sense of boundaries. The word boundaries, I don't even exist in Arabic. I don't know what the Egyptian term is for boundaries. So when I went to uni, you know, I'd smile at people and they'd look at me all weird and check if it was the person behind them, but nobody was there. And I was like, oh, damn, no, I need to make friends. Like, nobody's speaking to me here in this British country. And so I went online and I checked what societies they had because I thought, well, another way to meet people is to, you know, share an activity. And to my surprise, one of the big cultural shocks that I had um, when I was there was that they had a Kent Pole Fitness University Society. And I was like, this is so strange. What kind of university runs pole dance classes? But sure. And so I joined and I was addicted and bruised from day one. And it kind of like that's how it kind of happened. And I just really fell in love. And I really wanted it to be an indoor sport because I was freezing. So I knew it had to be something indoors, you know?
You're so old. Your
Yeah,
element.
absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, I remember traveling to, you know, the UK and being so impressed with the how pole dancing even 10 years ago was integrated so
Yeah,
well into the
yeah,
university culture.
absolutely. And till this day, it amazes me because, um, like I, like when I look back, I am so surprised by a lot of different things that were there. You know, like with our professors, we wouldn't call them professor or even Mr. X. You just call them by their first name basis, you know, and that was because you had crossed 18. So there was this kind of adulthood that you had entered into that just made everything, you know, there's no hierarchy really. And I think that was really nice, especially coming from the a Middle Eastern country like Egypt, where you're not necessarily so encouraged to, you know, express or explore your sensuality or move your body in an extremely feminine way. Even belly dancing, you know, they say you should only belly dance and shake your ass around, you know, like women, or be careful how sensual you are when you belly dance and stuff. So having that for me was really different. I have to say the truth though, I wasn't introduced to um, choreography in uni. It was mainly tricks, and I was mainly a trickster because that's what was offered. But we still did a performance at the end of year that wasn't necessarily sexy or anything, but had a theme, you know, James Bond, I remember, and that was kind of cool. So yeah, it is quite different, and it's very impressive how integrated it is into the university system there. It's very common. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, so when you came back and, you know, you were still a kid when you got back to
Yeah.
Egypt,
Yeah.
for you, you know, opening those, you know, the first pole dance studio in Egypt there in Cairo, what, you've talked a little bit about it, but what kind of like obstacles or things do you felt like you
Yeah.
came against when it came to doing it there in that location, knowing, you know, with the culture, like what kind of obstacles were you coming up to over and over again?
So, I mean, one of the common obstacles was, first of all, I was 20 years old. And, when you're 20 years old, opening up a business doesn't really seem like the natural thing to do. And I mean, back then, the entrepreneurship um, wave wasn't as strong as it is today. This was a good 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, opening up your own business at 20 basically meant that you were a nutcase and you were going to fail. So that was one of the things that kept coming up, especially because throughout my years, most of my employees and students as well were older than I was.
Mhm.
So it was kind of challenging, and I always felt like my shoes were too big for me to fill. So that was something that kept coming up for me as an instructor at the beginning, but also as a business owner throughout. But then the other thing as well is, and maybe that's a challenge that I had at the beginning, and not so much, you know, I think it wasn't the case 3 years in, which is how do you educate a community, right? How do you do this and not end up in jail? Basically, how do you do this and
Wow.
you know stay 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 on course and not be misunderstood, etc., etc. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges I had. And the other one, which was an insane challenge that actually birthed one of the most beautiful programs that we still run until today, was um, instructors. There was no one else. There was just me. And what I would do to learn is, I remember I bought your complete pole DVD sets,
Yeah.
right? And that was one of the only ways. And back then, there wasn't a lot of variety. I mean, I think it was probably your set and maybe another one that was available for me to purchase. And that's how I was teaching myself, because there were no classes I could join. There was no such thing as online privates. There was no such thing as, like, you go on Instagram and you find the tutorial. Nobody was posting tutorials back then. So, finding instructors to teach and being able to develop my learning was definitely a challenge that kept repeating itself. And, today I'm so blessed. I have a great team of 15 instructors, but even between us, we still need help from instructors abroad. And that's basically one of my biggest challenges. In year 2 of Pole Fit Egypt, I fractured my neck, and that meant I couldn't teach anymore. And um I was actually so embarrassed about it, which now in hindsight sounds insane, but I was so embarrassed about it because it was when the business was starting to pick up
Mhm.
attention and pick up a reputation, and kind of become this new hot trendy thing, wow, in Egypt. And I was like, but I broke my neck. So I actually didn't speak about it. Nobody except for my students knew, obviously, because I wasn't teaching anymore. And I don't know if you know or remember Josh Taylor. Yeah, like he had told me, Mint, Egypt is such a go to bucket list destination, and you should run residencies in Egypt.
Mhm.
And he had said that to me in one of my, a camp basically where I had met him there. And when I fractured my neck, I was like, well, I've already sold 3 months worth of classes. Who's going to teach those classes? And I started this residency program where people apply, and pole instructors around the world apply and they get a job abroad, and we offer them accommodation and a salary, and they get to travel around. And we still run it until today. We've hosted 52 people so far.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So
wonderful.
it's kind of cool. But yeah.
Yeah, I know that was such a wonderful program that you have. I remember when I came out to visit.
Yeah.
Also, something I'd love to talk about is, you know, paint a picture for us about what like how you run a pole studio in each
Yeah.
have when you have like when there are religious things to consider, when you want to protect people's way of life. I remember when I taught at your studio, I had such a beautiful insight as getting to see, these women coming from all different
Yeah.
backgrounds, coming in with their coverings. And then when class started, you know, everything came off and
Yeah.
people wearing the most awesome new pull out from here and there, and people were
Yeah.
rocking what was underneath all that. And then,
Yeah.
you know, what it was to even like take photos in class and what that meant,
Mm-hmm.
well as what basically, people walking in the door, then what happens, people walking
Yeah.
out, then what happens, and the way
I'm
they did that.
I mean, one of the most um, common words that we use that we get when we ask for feedback, and I mean, we just did this on Instagram about a week ago where we said, "Why do you keep coming to Pulfit Egypt?" And we wanted to share that with our audience, and everybody kept saying, "It's my safe haven. It's my home. It's my second home. It's my safe haven. It's where I feel safe. It's where I feel free." And to me, those words basically mean the things that you do feel kind of when you say I'm home. I'm home means that I can relax, that I can be whatever it is that I want to be, that I can take off my clothes if I want to and kick up my legs on the table and just chill, right? And this is what we needed to create to be able um, to run a whole business kind of in Egypt. Because the thing is that outside, in Cairo, um, I I wouldn't typically walk in shorts, no matter how hot it is. But then it's insane because as soon as you walk through our studio, shorts are a requirement, you know. And as your tricks get more advanced, those shorts get shorter and shorter and shorter. So it's kind of like a requirement. And I remember that was one of the things that still remains until today a question: do I have to wear shorts? So we had rules, and we introduced students to those rules from day one. So we have a class that's like a Pole 101 intro class, and beyond learning the fundamentals and basics on the pole itself, we set our rules there. And rule number one is that inside our studio in class, you cannot take out your phone and take pictures or videos of anybody until the instructor says, these are the last 5 minutes. Here's when you can take photos. And we don't take photos or videos into the mirror because the mirror bounces back and, films the entire studio. And maybe person X or person Y behind you doesn't necessarily want to be featured in your Instagram video. Or maybe she's actually someone who is covered in, real life outside and cannot actually be featured in your video. And I know even that, when you came to visit, when we would take our photos at the end or our videos at the end, we'd say, okay, guys, this is a non-postable picture. And the non-postable picture would be the one in bikinis and, whatever. And then we'd be like, okay, guys, we actually need to market our business. So this one is postable. And everybody puts their clothes on real quick, the ones who need to or who, want to, whichever one it is. And then we snap that photo, and that's the one that goes online. So there are definitely those things that we have to do. And then another 2 points are, first being, we are a female only studio. We don't teach males. I have been trained by fantastic male instructors. I've attended classes with instructors, with other students that were male, and I'm very comfortable with that. And I would have loved to be able to incorporate that in my studio. But the thing is that while there is nothing that says that I cannot, I know that it's very dangerous land to tread on, right? Because once you put male and female in the same studio, then it becomes very quickly for anyone um, to accuse you of entertainment, of being an entertainment business rather than a, educational business, if you want to put it in those terms or whatever terms you'd like to. So even when we ran Pole Theater Egypt was purely 100% run by women, 100% women performers. My own students would volunteer to be the ushers and the waiters and the people behind the drinks bar, to serve the entire competition. And that's kind of like a sacrifice and a decision, a hard decision that I had to take to make sure that I can protect our space. And then the final thing that was a challenge, or something that I had to take step by step, was the way that we marketed. So at the beginning, for the first good 2 years, we only did tricks classes. The pictures that we posted online were, we put our training shoes on just to make it look more sporty, although we trained in bare feet, which now sounds insane. But, that was part of the slowly educating the market, slowly educating the people around us. So we'd start with stills, and then I would start taking pictures of students, but only their faces, for example. So you could see them and be like, oh my God, yeah, that looks like that could be me, or I know this girl. And then slowly our students became more comfortable with taking pictures of them on the pole, but maybe doing like a strong move. And then the videos started coming, but they were only tricks videos. And then slowly, choreo started happening. And then now we're able to teach whatever we want, because we've kind of earned that credibility and also trust with our students. They know that even if we're teaching a sensual workshop, that this is a safe space, and that they're okay, and that they're fine, and that they're in good hands. So yeah.
That's just so amazing. I mean, at that, at such a young age, you took all that into account, and navigating all of those things. You basically slowly took a whole part of the world and gave them a drip education to get them to where you need to your business. And I just think that is just incredible. How have you seen the attitudes about it change for you over the time since you've been in business? Because when did you open Pulfit Egypt?
2013.
Yeah.
That's when it was open. So it was quite early. I think even the industry itself was quite young.
Yeah.
I have actually seen a huge shift and a huge pivot, because when I first opened Pulfit, I was not confident enough to say that this is what I was actually doing. Like when I'd meet new people and they'd say, oh yeah, cool, what do you do? I would just say, oh yeah, I'm an instructor, or, I just graduated out of university, interior architecture. I kind of evaluate the situation and see if I'd share or not. Obviously, all of my friends knew, but I'm talking about when you introduce yourself to people that you don't know. And today, it's actually the opposite. It's kind of like, hey, how are you? What's your name? Mint. Oh my God, are you Mint Pulfit Egypt? Yes, that's me. Wow. And when I first opened, for the first 3 years, there was only Pulfit Egypt, my studio. And the second studio opened 3 years after ours was already open. But today, I actually don't know how many studios exist in Cairo. I think it's the last time I counted, which was a couple of weeks ago, because the question baffled me. I counted up to 17.
Wow.
Which is insane, because, fast forward 9 years later, there are now 17 studios in the same city, which just shows you how much that industry has grown. And to me, that was such a big thing. I mean, my students, especially early on, would be like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody opened another studio. How dare they? And for me, I was like, no, guys, there is enough women to go around. I mean, look how many hairdressers we have. We have more than 5 in every district, and none of them are empty. All of them are full, And to me, it was like, wow, you have establish this industry in a way that somebody else believes that they can actually leave everything behind, open up this business, invest money in this new business, and be able to, spend most of their time doing this, and that it might actually be financially rewarding, right? So, wow.
Ooh, Mint, and that is why you are such a leader and such a special unique person in this industry. You just gave me chills with that. That's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. I mean, you have changed so many people's lives, and then brought this passion to so many people's lives, and been so generous in sharing it. And I just think it's It's incredible. But tell me about the I get all verklempt. I'm so proud.
I mean, coming from you, you know what that means to me because I mean, I have to share this story at one point in this conversation, right? But before we had met, before I had opened pole fit, I got my first pole injury super early, being hypermobile, and my knee in my first year of pole would lock because of how flexible it was and how not strong I was. And when I went to my physiotherapist, he said you had to stop doing pole, and I started crying. And because I kept crying, which I think was probably really awkward for him, he was like, okay, well, let's try 6 weeks of physio. And if that doesn't work, then you have to give it up. And at the time, you were my favorite pole dancer in the world. And I
Mm.
remember that was this one performance that you had done, and I watched it every day. And by the way, it's one of the ones that you posted in the last week. And I kept watching it every day on repeat until I finished my set for the day. And the next day on repeat until I finished my set for the day. And I used that to motivate me and inspire me because I could feel your movement speaking to me. And to me, that was a huge wow, like another dimension of motivation, of communication, where you've never met the person. They're only moving, they're not even speaking, and you understand exactly what it is that they want to say, right? That's for me insane. And so, this relationship is very special to me because it started before it even actually began, before we even met.
Oh, I love you, Mint. And it was such, I mean, what an honor to be able to come visit you and finally get to in person, experience you and your bright, bright light. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. um, Tell me about the women and the students that come through your doors.
I mean, my favorite thing about the women that come through my doors is how different they are. I have had, activists and interior designers and students and doctors and oncologists and, women who are lawyers and so many different people who work in so many different industries sit in the same place. Um, and I think that's one of my favorite things. Like the youngest student we have ever taught is 6 years old. The eldest student we have ever taught is 58 years old, which is insane. And the beautiful thing I find, which baffles me until today, is that sit in our lounge. That's one of the things that we have in all our studios, just kind of somewhere where people to socialize, where you have this one person who is so conservative and very religious and, maybe doesn't even wear trousers but only wears like loose skirts, sitting with someone else who is queer, which is insane for Egypt, because I mean, being gay here is illegal, literally illegal. So I know we are so far behind, my friends. But I mean, you'd see those two people and you'd think, where would they meet in life? Where else would they meet in life on a regular basis and share the same community? And, it baffles me because everybody gets along so well. And this is one of the things that I have never understood. Of course, we have had disputes in the business, but never between people. Sense of acceptance for the beliefs or the way of thinking that these girls have, and for the differences between them, which I think is so beautiful, because it's so easy for me to be like, oh, you are like me, let's hold hands and walk together. But what is much more beautiful and what is much more rare, I think, is saying, you know what, I don't necessarily agree, I like to live my life a different way, but I can hold your hand and walk too. And without actually, doing something specific or engaging them in any specific conversation, I think there is something about pole, something about the fact that when you walk into class, you take off literally all those layers, right? And you're standing there and you're like, I am an adult, I might fall, I need to trust my partner to spot me, I feel a bit embarrassed about this cellulite on my thighs, and you already kind of feel uncomfortable from day one, from hour one, from minute one. And I think that discomfort kind of brings the vulnerability out of people and allows them to lean in. And because they don't know much about each other until after they walk out of that class and they communicate in the lounge, there's a hell lot of, if you want to call it shedding skin that has already happened. And that makes acceptance and connection so much more strong. And this is one of the things that we actually pick our team based on. We don't only pick members of our team, whether in the front desk or on our operations or instructors that are just talented at what they do. We also look for the human characteristic, and I believe that's the reason why it's been able to also radiate beyond me. And that's very special. I think that's really, really special.
Yeah, so well said. I mean, I think, there is something about pole dance and pole studios around the world that brings, yeah, like you're saying, it really brings people down to their most vulnerable, stripped away selves. And then they're able to laugh and walk along with these other people that they never would have come in contact with otherwise. And such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. I think that happens all over the place, but wow, in Egypt, in a very special, special way, there being such huge divisive different ways of life. You're doing your own part in this world to create that safe haven and that safe space for people to mix and mingle. Yeah, I just love that. What's next for you? What's inspiring these days? Where do you envision the next step of your journey here going?
So, I mean, that is actually such a well-timed question because I had already made a decision a couple of years back. And I mean, this is the first time that I say it publicly. Only my team knows this. But I had already made the decision early last year that I was going to slowly exit my position as CEO, and that I was going to embark on a new journey. I am still very passionate about working with women. I love teaching. I live and breathe teaching. I really enjoy it. And I just finished studying financial therapy, which I think is a very relevant topic for women in Egypt and the Middle East and around the world, but specifically on this side of the world where it's a very male dependent situation where most women depend on males for money. So I just finished that, and I just actually got accepted, and I'm about to start a somatic sexologist certification. So these are the areas that I'm hoping to tap into and to explore in the near future. So basically working with women and men, but I mean, I love working with women on finances and financial literacy and the relationship with money in general, any anxiety around that or discomfort around that. And also at the same time, I am hoping to work with them on sexual pleasure, and, kind of tackle that and really dig deep and offer a space for safe exploration and discovery and guidance. And I would love, to reach a point where at least if all the women in my circle, join me on something and then walk out feeling that they have the right to pleasure, that would be amazing. Because I think there are so many people in the Middle East that don't even feel like pleasure, sexual pleasure, is a right for them. So that's kind of where I am moving in.
That's incredible, and congratulations. It
Thank
almost feels
you.
like a a parallel and very
Yeah.
like a very natural movement. And I
Yeah.
just it will shine in all of these new. You've always been a seeker, you've always been a learner, you've always you know, looked to create these safe spaces for women. And I just feel like I kind of sitting here going, like, yeah, I could
Yeah.
totally
I mean,
like
that's what everybody else was
to
saying
me.
too. And it was insane for me. I was like, oh my God, was it that obvious? You know? But but I guess yes. I guess yes, because I mean, the reason that I thought to study this didn't, it just came naturally because I was talking to girls in the studio, and you know, I start up conversations about relationships. I start up conversations about money. I start up conversations about sex. I start up conversations about things that typically in our culture are not, you know, things that you talk about. You don't really talk about and reflect on your relationship with your parents, because we live in a culture where your parents are the best thing in the world because they gave birth to you and you are still alive. So, you know, that's like the best thing ever. And then also, like when it comes to money, I learned when I lived abroad that I could say, you know, this is how much I can afford. And here that's kind of like a shame. You shouldn't say that. You should say you're not available, not that's how much I can afford. And because there are these topics that are so taboo that you don't even talk about, let alone explore, I think I organically felt that there was a need here. And because of that, I just jumped in online and started searching, you know, what is it that I can do? What is it I can do? But my friends are really funny because their reaction is I don't get it. Like, you got away with bringing pole to Egypt. Like, are you just, do you just thrive on walking right on the edge? What is it exactly? You know, like, maybe I do. I don't know. I see a need, and that's what makes sense to me. And I'm like, maybe, you know, I'm socially intelligent enough to maneuver.
You know what? It's fantastic because it's beautiful. Yeah, it's like the conversations that blossomed from the safe haven that you created with Pulfit Egypt were the conversations that started to inspire you to continue to move on your journey and whatever you felt like there was a need and that you had a passion and that you had something to share. So yeah, I love it. I remember when I was there and you were talking about how, you know, you have these groups of women and you got this kind of, you know, these WhatsApp conversations, these big group
Yes.
where
Yes.
all the people who were in class together would start to chat about this and that and
Yeah.
home life and their husbands and sex and yeah
And
and
it still happens. Yes. And I remember specifically when you were here, you know, there were two things that we talked about that now I'm like, oh yeah, of course it makes sense, because you were here in August 2016, which now feels like a million years ago, right? But but I mean, even back then, I remember I had shared with you that there was this one student of ours who was getting married and so anxious to have sex, and you know, there was no literacy for her to even know how it works or how to, you know, settle into it or how to calm down or anything. And I remember there was a group of our students that created a WhatsApp group basically with this sole goal and target to make her comfortable and educate her on what the hell to do and how to have sex when she gets married, you know, which was insane. And I had mentioned to you as well that, you know, sex toys and vibrators were banned here, and that, you know, there wasn't such a thing as walking into a shop and purchasing a vibrator. You know, there still isn't such a thing. And I remember us having that conversation. And so I guess it was, yeah, I guess it was planted there, you know, 8 years ago, me thinking, how are we going to address this? You know?
I
But
remember
yeah,
distinct conversation and will stay with me forever when I came to visit you guys.
yeah.
I don't want, you know, I'm so excited to come back. I'm gonna miss you guys so much. What should I bring? What do you want me
Vibrators.
to bring the
Yeah,
time I come? And we were thinking, oh, well, I wonder how many sex toys and vibrators you could fit into your suitcase and all this kind of
absolutely.
it was just what a
Yeah.
eye-opening trip and to be welcomed into your, you know, your community and to be able to hang out with, you know, the people who work, the employees at Pulfit Egypt and you, and experiencing that culture and experiencing what it felt outside the studio, what it felt inside the studio, like the things that you guys had to think about. And it was just I remember coming back from that trip just with my eyes so open and just so
Yeah,
appreciative for that experience. And anyways, I'm so happy for you, Mint. And I, of course, I know we don't get to talk a ton, but have watched your journey over these
yeah.
last few years, and just know that I'm sending so much love to you and that we've had the opportunity to do this interview. I was so excited when Lupin mentioned it. I was like,
Me too.
my gosh, of course I want to talk to Mint.
Me
So,
too, me too. I was like, oh my God, yes, I love her. I am in. I don't even need to know any details. Lupit, yes, Sergia, yes, I'm in. That's it. And I really, really like that. And I really appreciate, those special moments where I have crossed paths with you in my journey, be it before it even began or during, or, now, like during COVID and now. I always grow when I speak with you. And I think that's very, very special to be able to connect with people around the world in the same industry that, um, that you have a natural understanding with. I think is so beautiful. And that's definitely one of the things that I do have with you that is very, very, important to me and very big in my heart.
well, I am sending you love from across the world, and I dream of someday sitting down with you and having a meal and being in person with you once.
Yes,
Know that I'm
yes.
sending love to you. And so much for sharing yourself on this interview, and you and I will
Thank
talk.
you.
Good luck with all your new endeavors.
Thank you. I'll keep you posted.
All right. Have a beautiful Tuesday. Talk
Have a
soon.
beautiful day. Bye.